Greetings, my beloved clients. I was thinking about you this morning. I was going to do a video expanding on some of the points of the 10-bagger strategy, but I woke up and took a look at the markets, and there's a lot of turbulence in the markets this morning, especially in the areas of cryptocurrency. And so I wanted to address that because one of our large positions in the portfolio is GBTC, which is a Bitcoin trust. And so it's having an impact on our portfolio. And so I thought it would be timely to talk about that. So news came out from China that they're trying to impede banks from using cryptocurrencies or participating in cryptocurrency activities. And because they're a controlled government, they can influence what their banks do to a large degree. So there's a big sell-off because there's concern that China is shutting down cryptocurrencies in their country. And so that's one of the main reasons for the sell-off. And so let's talk about Bitcoin for a second. And should we be concerned, and what should we expect? So I started hearing about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency a few years ago, and some of the people that I respected thought very highly of it. And so I had some downtime in October. I took about a week to really get my hands into it and try to understand it, because it is quite confusing. It's such a new technology, and it's hard to understand because you don't really have a reference to that type of thing when we're used to the kind of money that we grew up with. Not in the amounts of money, but dollars and checks and credit cards and ATMs and banks and that whole system that we're used to, and it's different. Okay, so, and when I saw the potential and I saw the capabilities, it was really clear why other people that understood it were so excited about it, and that it really has the ability to be transformative in so many areas. And I said, well, of course this thing is going to really take off. And I understood the limited supply and how it derives its value. And I said, well, of course this thing's going to go up over time quite a bit. So we started buying it around in November when Bitcoin was around 17,000 or so. And it took off. It got up to over 60,000, and today it's pulled back down to about 30,000. So big run up and a big pullback. And we knew it would be volatile because whenever there's passion about something on both sides, people passionately for it and others passionately against it, that creates volatility. And that's the case in Bitcoin. So I just want to talk about what it is and why I see the potential and why I'm not worried about this temporary pullback. So Bitcoin was the brainchild of someone or some group that went by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto, and we don't really know who he is or who they are, but a white paper was written, I think back in 2009, and it was largely in response to the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008, because quite frankly, when all those mortgage-backed securities and that financial crisis of that time, the financial system was literally within minutes of collapsing. That's not an exaggeration. And at the 11th hour, government stepped in and became a lender of last resort and a backstop, and they determined that these large financial institutions were too big to fail, because they would have failed if the government had not intervened. And so the proponents of Bitcoin saw that the system is fragile, that it depends on banks. We're counting on banks to be responsible in the way they lend, or else we could see another 2007, 2008, because the banks stopped being responsible. So that's a lot of trust to put into the banking system, right? And it's a risk. Why would you trust these bankers these greedy bankers who are acting in their own self-interest? It's a dangerous thing to give them that much control and that much power. And then we saw the government step in and just flood the economy with money so this problem wouldn't blow up. And so you're trusting the governments to be responsible as well. And our currency is only backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. Well, what if we lose our full faith in the U.S. government? Or what if their credit is not as good as it was? We're counting on them to keep their credit up, right? And especially what you see today, how many trillions of dollars they're spending, and you question the soundness of that, and it puts our currency at risk. So Bitcoin, one of the things it does, it's a form of currency that does not have to go through banks or through governments. Because if I were to give you money or you were to give me money, either we'd exchange currency, which is US dollars backed by the full faith and credit of the US government, or I'd transfer it to you by going from my bank to your bank, right? So either way, the bank or the government is an intermediary in every financial transaction, or both the banks and the government. Okay, so Bitcoin is a way to make transactions without going through the banks or the government. You go directly person to person. So you don't have to worry about the banks doing the right thing or the government doing the right thing. Okay? And it's a huge innovation. The second thing it's a digital ledger, which is amazing. So for example, if you own a house or you're looking at a piece of property and you want to find out information on this property, who owns it, who holds the deed on it, well, you go to the county recorder's office and you pull up this microfiche, right? And what if that whole system were to be able to be on some type of digital ledger, and the time to look that up or the cost would go to next to nothing. And so the blockchain provides that type of technology as well. So those are two of the things that this blockchain does that could really revolutionize transactions and record keeping. And so it's so efficient that it's bound to take off, and it has. And more people have recognized the abilities of Bitcoin, and it started gaining mainstream acceptance, especially in the last year. And that's just going to continue because of the efficiency. So, and more so in other countries beside the United States, because in the United States, although our banks almost messed up big time in 2007, compared to banks of other countries, our banks have been pretty stable. we don't see these runs on the banks and banks shutting down like they happen in other countries. Think Latin America or Eastern Europe. That it's not uncommon for banks to fail and people to lose money and stuff like that. So those people from those countries tend to not be so trusting of banks because maybe they've been burned or they have a family member that's been burned, and it's not an uncommon occurrence. And the other thing, our government does have we do have pretty good faith in our government, and our government does have good credit, but that cannot be said of many other governments around the world. It's not a rare occurrence that a government will decide to devalue its currency, and it has a huge impact on its citizens, right? So those type of places that don't trust their banks or their government really see the opportunity in Bitcoin, and that kind of rural type of person that maybe doesn't have a bank account or an ATM nearby. What if they wanted to have some type of transaction, sell some chickens or cows or buy some property or provide construction service to a neighbor, and how would they get paid? Well, if neither one has a bank account or a credit card or cash, how would they do that? Well, they could do it with Bitcoin. It's amazing in the third world who has cell phones, and they could transact. And so the capabilities and the potential of Bitcoin is huge around the world, not just in third world countries, but in developed countries as well. And it's something that the train has left the station. It's the cat is out of the bag. They're not going to get it back in. But the governments realize that as it is adopted more widely, they're losing power, and so they're going to push back. And especially control countries like China, they're going to be the first ones to push back, and that's what's happening in the markets today. And I expect to see pushback from governments over time as the cryptocurrencies become larger and larger. But because they don't like to give up power, right? They don't like to give up control. But they're eventually going to realize, and probably realize now, that they can't win this fight. And so what are they going to do? Eventually they're going to acknowledge that this thing is coming. So they're going to have to pivot to say, okay, this is coming. There's nothing we could do about it. What can we do to stay in control? And they'll figure something out. They could regulate it and tax it, and they're back in control, and we all have a better system. So same thing with the banks. The banks are pushing back because it's taking away control from them. But we've already seen this year, banks are transitioning to realize, how can we be participants in this, be in front of this, and not lose our power and not lose our control. So it's going to be a rocky transition for sure. Governments and banks are going to fight the transition, and it's going to create volatility in the price of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency markets. But over time, we're going to see the price of these cryptocurrencies go up and to the right. It's inevitable over the long term, and so we're long-term holders, and these type of dips are opportunities to buy more, quite frankly. And it is unnerving to see the price movement, but I just want you to know that we're on top of this. We have a long-term thesis, and we're going to not panic, and we're going to keep a close eye on it. But we're going to be careful and cautious, and make decisions with our mind and not our emotions. And I think long term, as investors, you should be rewarded. So I just want to give you that update to give you peace of mind that this is not taking us by surprise, and we're working through it. Okay. I hope you guys have a great day. I'm off to the top of the mountain.